In this video, we're going to be talking about prosocial relations. In previous videos, we've talked about things like antisocial relations, so why do people not get along with each other? In this video, we're going to talk about the reasons why we do get along with each other. What is the way that we form our groups? Why do we like other people, including why are we attracted to other people? How does love work? And what's altruism? And how does altruism work in our daily lives? So let's just kind of dive right in. So one of the easiest ways that we can look at how we help others is by looking at our in groups, right? So these are the groups that we are a part of. So here you've got people tailgating a sports team. They're all supporters of the same team, therefore they must get along. This is one of the reasons why going to a sporting event, you wear your team's colors. It means that you're probably not going to get heckled or anything like that. Because we tend to look out for those that have similar beliefs or that who like the same things we do. Let's talk about though another level of this, which is attraction. So how do we define attraction? In fact, there's one metric that is used most likely to show whether or not we're going to find something attractive or not, and that is proximity, or what we call the mere exposure effect. What this means is it's very simple, that the more something is repeated, the more you are exposed to something, the more you will grow to like it. Think of that song that when you first heard it on the radio, you hated it, you thought it was trash, but then after you heard it 10, 12,000 times, you found yourself singing along to it. You slowly came around to liking it. That is mere exposure. That is the more times we're exposed to something, that merely being exposed to something in a repeated process means that we're probably going to like it. There were all these studies done that if you were looking in, for who would form in relationships, the number one predictor was how close they lived together. People that lived in the same neighborhoods or the same blocks were more likely to find each other attractive and join a relationship. Why? Because they see each other all the time, and that exposure leads to them liking that person. The explanation from, I guess, an evolutionary perspective is that we see things that we're familiar with as safe. We've tried it before, seems to be okay, doesn't bother us, therefore that mere exposure seems to work. We also know that appearance most affects first impressions. So that old adage that you need to look your best when you're meeting someone new or you're going for a job interview, that's true. Appearance is the most defining factor of a first impression. And I like that, the line there. I think it's pretty common to say that men say that attraction is top of mind when we're talking about significant others. But women are more likely to say that appearance doesn't matter. But in fact, in the data, it does. They do ultimately end up saying that attraction matters to women, which is, of course it does, right? People want to be with someone that they find attractive. Now, what do we mean by attractive, and what can we learn from that? Well, we know that physical attraction, so people who are more attractive conventionally, there's a positive correlation to frequency of dates, that people are more likely to go on dates if they're more attractive. And also feelings of popularity. We tend to like people who are attractive. In fact, we say as a culture, as individuals, that attractive people tend to be healthier, happier, more successful, and more sensitive than less attractive counterparts, knowing nothing besides just what they look like. Which is an interesting collection of traits, right? Those are all pretty much positive traits. Now, what doesn't correlate is attraction with honesty or compassion, which I think is also really interesting, that we tend to see attractive people as more likely to lie to us or be deceitful or not, or be self-centered or something like that. But notice that attraction has nothing to do with self-esteem, that the way that we view ourselves has nothing to do with how other people find us attractive, which is good news for those of us that may be struggling with self-esteem issues. That a lot of times people are really down on themselves because of the way that they look, but in reality, right, there's really not that connection between a low self-esteem and unattraction, or being seen as, or other people seeing you as being unattractive. We also know that attractive generally is cultural. There are some kind of underlying aspects there, but what one culture finds attractive, another culture might not. I know, like, for example, that there are some cultures in Africa where obesity is considered attractive. And in most places in the West, that's not usually the case. Um, right? It's a cultural thing. It is what it is. But we know that, just like with a lot of other preferences that we have, whether it's our food preferences, our religious preferences, our media preferences, it's all cultural. It's all cultural. But the one thing that seems pretty standard is the fact that symmetry and statistically average features make for attractive faces. So people don't generally like uh, a face that has some features that are larger than normal. Or also, we like faces that are symmetrical. So here you've got two individuals. The only difference between the two photos is that the ones on the bottom are mirror images of right to left. Um, and we tend to find those faces to be more attractive than the slightly less symmetrical faces above them. And that is because we typically find symmetry attractive when we're talking about faces. So let's talk about the next side of things that usually follows attraction, and that is a romantic relationship. So, how does this work, and what are the different levels here? So, there's really kind of three types of, or I guess four types of romantic relationships, and they all kind of deal with two or three parts of this kind of triangle of intimacy, commitment, and passion. And I like the phrases here. So intimacy, liking, right? So that's, you like someone, you enjoy spending time with them, you share things with them, right? That is an intimate moment. That's what we mean by intimate, gentlemen. Passion, right, that's like infatuation. So that maybe you're obsessed with somebody, you're really really into them, right? We know what that means. And then commitment is the third level here. So it is a love that is shared and that there's a commitment there. So typically when relationships start, they kind of go through a normal standard, which is they usually start with what we would call a romantic love or a romantic relationship, where you have that intimacy, you really like the person, and you're really, really into them, right? So that leads to that romantic love. That's the John Cusack standing outside of the bedroom window holding up the boombox. That reference is probably totally lost on you. That's the guy chasing down the girl in the movies, or the girl pulling out all the stops to try to get to the guy that she's really into, right? That's the romantic love. That is usually how relationships start. But that passion over time, just as human nature, tends to fade. Um, and that usually either leads to the end of a relationship, that there's a lack of the passion and that causes the relationship to end, or it transforms into what is usually called a companionate relationship, where you still really like that person, you still enjoy spending time with them, and you've made a commitment to them that you are going to stay together, whether that is a marriage or just some other social norm, that you have committed to them, that this is your partner, this is your person. That is what we call companionate love. That doesn't have the same kind of fiery passion of a romantic relationship, but it's one that is also stable. There's the relationship here that both people enjoy each other, and they're willing to stick together because they made that commitment together. What psychologists call consummate love, that is where you have all three. You have the passion, you have the liking, and you have the commitment. So that is kind of what everybody's hoping for. It's the kind of gold standard of relationships there. So yeah, so that's kind of the way that psychologists talk about love and relationships. You can see that there's what we kind of call foolish love, which is where you're committed to somebody and you're really into them, but you don't really like them. So this could be like an on again, off again relationship. A relationship that maybe has like highs and lows. Um, those relationships tend to be kind of like full of passion and full of commitment for whatever reason, without that kind of intimacy and sharing and genuine liking of the other person. Okay, so we've done attraction, which leads us to romantic relationships. But what about helping others? What about altruism? Right, the selfless, an unselfish regard for the welfare of other people. Right? Hey, that's the definition. So we see this in the story of the Hotel Rwanda, where or Schindler's List or something like that, where people go to great lengths to benefit others without regard for themselves. We like to hold those people up as heroes, as kind of the right way to live. That we should be looking out for others, without regard to ourselves. Um, but that leads to a study of, well, can we alter conditions that make people more likely to help others or less likely to help others? This is social psychology after all. So let's get into some of the data. Let's talk about how these things work. So there's a kind of branch of altruistic studies that deals with bystander intervention. So what do we mean by that? We mean, how likely are you to help someone, say, on the street if they're having a medical emergency? Again, right now we like to think that we all would, but we know that that's not entirely true. So there's a couple of steps here that I'm actually going to fast forward, and then we'll come back to these notes later. Um, here's the kind of chart for bystander intervention. So the first thing you need to do is, do you notice the thing that's happening? Do you notice a person in trouble? Do you notice something that is out of the normal? If you don't notice that there's anything weird, then you're definitely not going to help. But if you do, right, now there's a next step. Do you interpret it as an emergency? Yes or no? Right? So no, then you don't help. It's not an emergency. Maybe that guy laying on the sidewalk's just passed out drunk. Maybe he's a drug addict, right? It's not an emergency. They're fine. It is what it is. If you say yes, now the question really gets into responsibility. Is it my responsibility to help, or is it not my responsibility to help? If it's not, if you don't believe that it is your responsibility to help, you don't help. Think of it, maybe you're driving on the highway, you see a really bad car accident up ahead, there's no paramedics there yet. How likely are you to stop to help the people there? Right? Most people would like to say that they would, but based off of our lived experience, that's not the case. Maybe people even feel guilty. Oh man, I really should have stopped. They look like they need a lot of help, but they keep on driving, right? Why? Because we don't assume that responsibility. There's EMTs, there's firefighters, there are people who are trained to help, and they're probably on their way. So I don't need to assume that responsibility to myself. But if I do notice that there's something happening, that I interpret it as an emergency, and that I think that it's my responsibility to help, then I'm almost guaranteed to step in and try to do something to help. This happens a lot with, I live in Philadelphia. If any of you guys go into the city a lot, there is, a homeless population, right? How often do we interact with that homeless population if it looks like someone's injured or hurt? Um, I'll tell you guys a story here on tape. Whoa. My first year teaching AP psychology, I had just finished up this lesson, bystander intervention, and I was heading to work, and I was stopping at Wawa, and there's a Wawa by me, in South Philly that was, there's usually a guy out front asking for change. Um, well, in this day in particular, this guy who I recognized and talked to a little bit was laying on the ground, which was very uncharacteristic of him. And people were just literally walking right past him, some even literally stepping over him in their way into Wawa to get their coffee. Um, I immediately thought of bystander intervention, and I went over to check to see if he was okay. Luckily, he was. He was just sleeping, but that was something that was out of the ordinary for him. Not a big hero, not a big, saves his day, whatever. It's probably not even a great story, but me knowing about bystander intervention helped me potentially intervene in something that I thought could have been more serious, right? I had that cognitive moment of, wait, I can't just go on with my day. How long is it going to take for me to just stop and see if this guy's doing all right? Um, and I did, and he was, and it was fine. Um, but that is the power of being in a bystander intervention, and we follow each other's cues here. So when we say notices the incident, right? Like, oh my God, how could I not notice that there's like this guy passed out on the sidewalk? Well, sometimes we don't if there are other people around. If you're with a group of people and there's a bunch of people on the street, maybe you don't actually notice what's happening off to the side, right? Because no one else is paying any attention to it. It's like the reverse. It's conformity, right? Instead of looking up into the tree where nothing's there, now we're walking past someone when there is something there. Please forgive. That is my dog Ralph making dinosaur noises, I guess, downstairs. I have no idea what's happening. But hopefully he's doing okay. I'll have to go check on him in a minute. Um, so let's get back into altruism. So we know that when we're in groups, we're less likely to pay attention to our surroundings, right? So we need to make sure that as we are, one of the benefits of social psychology is learning these things so that we can then improve our lives and others around us. So, being in a group, make sure that we're aware of our surroundings there. Social exchange theory, right? This helps explain why we tip strangers or give the homeless guys or girls change, right? Why do we help them out if it doesn't help us at all? One is the idea that there's a reciprocity norm. If that were to happen to me, right? God forbid I was homeless, I would want someone to help me. Other things could be the social responsibility norm, that that's just the right thing to do. We should just help out each other. It's what society says we should do. Those are the two things there that kind of outline altruism and how we, look at others, right? The social exchange theory, are we engaged in a society where we kind of give and take with each other, right? I can help you out this time because I know you're going to help me out next time. I think of social exchange theory as, like you go out to dinner with a group of friends, maybe this time you pick up the tab, the next time your friend picks up the tab. It just kind of all, kind of washes out in the end. Let's talk about peacemaking, and will be the last thing that we do. So we know that with cooperation, sometimes just being close together, that mere exposure is not enough. Sometimes we need to take that to a more intentional level. And we can a lot of times overcome obstacles by working together, right? We know that's true, but sometimes that helps build that bond and helps people break through any barriers that they were having. So one example is to, maybe you got into let's just say that you got into a fight with somebody. One of the things that, you might have to do is, complete a project with that person. That extended time with that person could help break down that conflict between the two individuals. It's actually used a lot in schools, in disciplinary proceedings, and in some other types of, like workplace issues, or, just, all right, you guys are not getting along. Let's, put you in a situation where you have to work together. We know that communication increases cooperation. A lot of times when you have a third party mediate between the two, that actually leads to more communication, more cooperation, less conflict. And also when we talk about conciliation, right? We also, what am I going to give up in order to make this, to repair this relationship if there was damage done? And any sort of conciliation, any sort of thing that's related into like an arbitration proceeding or anything, there has to be a mutual interest. There has to be something that you can both work towards, right? Think of a negotiation. You both are self interested. If you're negotiating, say, the price of a new car, the guy selling you the car wants to get as much money as possible. You want to get it for as less as, little money as possible. But you have to meet somewhere in the middle. At the end of the day, you want the new car. They want to sell you a car. You're going to have to give. Both parties are going to have to give. It's just a matter of being fair. And we also know that through peacemaking, that cultural diversity is a good thing. Being exposed to multiculturalism, differences of ideas, lead us to be less aggressive and less conflict oriented than otherwise the case. Um, when we talk about implicit biases, the good news of implicit biases is there's a solution, and that is to, if you find yourself that you have an implicit bias against old people, say, um, hang out with more old people. That will get rid of your implicit bias, right? Expanding friend groups to include people that are not the normal cast of characters that you hang out with. That is a surefire way to become a more open-minded and a more peace-loving and a more, I would argue, genuinely good human being. And the way that we do that is through diversity, not homogeneity. So that's my little PSA for diversity. We will talk more about that, obviously, as the year goes on and in this unit in our classroom sessions. So, yeah, let me know if you guys have questions. That's it for social psych. We are at the end of the slideshow. So until next time, when we start talking about bio, that'll be the next unit we get into. Make sure if you guys have questions that you're reaching out so that I can give you a hand. All right, take care.